The Circle Line has a special atmosphere. It's literally a loop that connects some of the oldest parts of London's tube system. Many of these areas were dug up through layers of history, and honestly, they weren't meant to be disturbed. From mass burial sites dating back to the 17th century to the heartbreaking stories of civilians caught up in World War II, the Circle Line is intertwined with tales that are a bit spooky. And these aren't just urban legends. You'll find plenty of accounts in station logbooks, and long-time staff members often share their own eerie experiences during those quiet moments between the last train and the first one in the morning. It's a fascinating mix of history and mystery that makes riding the Circle Line an adventure all on its own. The London Underground, especially the Metropolitan and District lines that form the basis for the Circle Line, kicked off its construction in the mid-1800s with a method called cut and cover. Basically, this involved digging deep trenches right through the streets and then putting roofs over them. But in a city as old as London, this process meant they often had to dig up churchyards, forgotten crypts, and even mass graves. This disruption of human remains is actually mentioned in many local legends about the underground, and is often pointed to as a reason for all the ghostly sightings. Back during the Great Plague of 1665, so many people died that local graveyards were completely overwhelmed. Authorities had no choice but to create plague pits, huge trenches where thousands of bodies were dumped in layers. These pits could be about 20 feet deep, 40 feet long, and 16 feet wide. Since they were dug during such chaotic times, the exact spots where these pits were located became lost over time. It wasn't until Victorian workers started building railways that they stumbled upon bones while digging. So yeah, when you ride the tube today, just remember, there's a lot more history beneath your feet than you might think. Aldgate Station stands on the site of one of the most notorious plague pits in the East End. The station is so synonymous with paranormal activity that it has historically maintained a ghost logbook to track sightings. The lore of Aldgate is dominated by a specific entity that appears to deviate from the typical scary ghost stories, acting instead as a protector for the living. One of the most credible and frequently cited stories at Aldgate involves an incident from the mid to late 20th century. An electrician was performing repairs on a live buzz bar. A heavy-duty electrical conductor, a colleague, observing from a distance, witnessed a transparent, elderly woman approach the worker and gently stroke his hair. As she did this, the worker made a potentially fatal error and touched a wire carrying high-voltage electricity. However, as credible as the story is, some tales claim the voltage was between 20,000 and 22,000 volts. This was obviously exaggerated for the tale, as the voltage is around 620 volts. Anyhow, under normal conditions, such a surge would have been lethal. It turns out that the man was merely knocked unconscious and suffered no lasting injuries. The witness insisted that the Old Woman of Aldgate had somehow shielded the man from the full force of the current. This story has persisted for decades, reinforcing the idea that not all spirits in the tunnels are malevolent. Beyond the guardian spirit, Aldgate is also linked to the tragic Sullivan family fire of 1896, in which 3 young girls perished. Local legends suggest that the cries of these children can still be heard in the tunnels leading away from the station toward Aldgate East. Staff have also reported phantom footfalls that echo down the dark tunnels, approaching the platforms only to stop abruptly when they reach the edge of the station's lights. These reports often coincide with quiet periods when the ambient noise of the city above is at its lowest. Bank Station is a sprawling complex that serves as a major interchange on the Circle Line loop. It is widely considered one of the most haunted locations in the entire network, largely due to its proximity to the Bank of England and the ancient churchyards that were disturbed during its building. The most famous apparition at Bank is Sarah Whitehead, known as the Black Nun. Her story is a tragic case of historical sorrow translated into a persistent haunting. In 1811, her brother, Philip Whitehead, was a clerk at the Bank of England who was caught forging cheques. He was found guilty and executed. The shock of her brother's death caused Sarah to lose her grip on reality. For the next several decades, some say 40 years, she would arrive at the Bank of England every morning, dressed entirely in black mourning clothes and a veil, asking for her brother. She died in the late 19th century and was buried in a nearby graveyard, but her spirit is said to continue her daily search. Staff and commuters at Bank Station report seeing a woman in black moving through the corridors, often weeping or appearing lost. In 1982, a station employee reportedly tried to help an old lady he thought had been locked in the station after the gates closed. He followed her into a dead-end corridor with no possible exit, only to find she had vanished into thin air. The presence of the Black Nun is often accompanied by an unexplained, unpleasant smell, which many associate with the stagnant water or the rotting remains in the disturbed graves of St. Christopher le Stocks beneath the Bank of England garden. Bank Station was also the site of a devastating bombing on the 11th of January 1941. A German bomb fell directly through the ticket hall and exploded, killing over 50 people and injuring many more. During quiet times, passengers have reported hearing the collective moans and cries of those killed in the blast, a residual haunting that captures the sheer scale of the wartime tragedy. As the Circle Line moves through the northern sections of its loop, it passes through some of the busiest interchanges in London. These stations, while modernised, retain a deep connection to the city's darker folklore. King's Cross Station is famously haunted by a modern apparition linked to the catastrophic fire of November the 18th, 1987, which claimed 31 lives. The fire was caused by a discarded match that ignited years of accumulated grease and debris beneath a wooden escalator. Since the 1990s, witnesses have reported seeing a young woman with long brown hair, wearing jeans and a t-shirt. She is described as being in a state of extreme distress, running through the corridors with her arms outstretched and crying for help. When concerned passers-by attempt to comfort her, she reportedly vanishes, or, in one instance, a witness claimed to have walked straight through her. This spirit is often seen in the vicinity of the former fire site, and some report the phantom smell of smoke in the air, even when no fire is present. A persistent piece of London folklore claims that Queen Boudica, the Iceni warrior who led a revolt against the Romans, is buried beneath platforms 9 and 10 at King's Cross. While historical evidence for this is sparse, the legend has taken root in the cultural consciousness of Londoners. Some believe that her fierce spirit haunts the tunnels, manifesting as a dark, looming presence that makes staff feel uneasy when walking the tracks at night. Those of you who like Harry Potter will also know this is the location of the famous fictional platform 9 3/4, again pretending to be between platforms 9 and 10. Baker Street, one of the original 1863 stations, is intrinsically linked to the fictional history of Sherlock Holmes. While the detective was a literary creation, the station's folklore includes sightings of a tall man in Victorian attire that many passengers insist is the ghost of Arthur Conan Doyle's creation. More historically, the spirit of Sarah Siddons, a famous 18th century actress, is said to haunt the area near the station where her home once stood before it was demolished for the Metropolitan Line extension. The southern portion of the Circle Line contains several stations with distinct and unsettling stories that highlight the diverse nature of underground hauntings. At Victoria Station, folklore centres on a black lady who haunts the station and the nearby Shakespeare pub. Unlike the Black Nun of Bank, this figure is often described as a southern commuter who died waiting for a train that never arrived. She is seen standing on the platforms in Victorian-era mourning dress, looking expectantly toward the tunnel mouth. Some accounts suggest she died of malnutrition or a broken heart, and her presence is said to bring a sudden, icy chill to the air, even in the heat of summer. Embankment Station is home to one of the few hauntings exclusively reported by staff. The activity occurs in a disused tunnel known as Page's Walk, which is no longer accessible to the public, but remains a necessary access point for maintenance workers. For decades, staff have complained of the feeling of being watched, a persistent, heavy gaze that follows workers as they walk the length of the passage. Moving objects, doors that are locked and checked being found wide open or slamming shut when there is no draft. Cold spots, distinct areas of the tunnel where the temperature drops so sharply that breath becomes visible, even though the rest of the tunnel is warm. These reports are so common that some junior staff members have reportedly refused to enter Page's Walk alone. Sloane Square Station is an architectural oddity with a tragic psychological weight. It is famously built around the River Westbourne, which is carried across the tracks in a massive iron pipe. The constant sound of water creates an atmosphere that many find unutterably depressing. In April 1960, Sloane Square was the site of a tragedy that made international headlines. Peter Davies, who was the real-life inspiration for J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan, took his own life by throwing himself under a train at the station. Davies had spent his entire adult life struggling with the legacy of being the boy who never grew up, a label he found embarrassing and burdensome. Following his death, staff at Sloane Square have reported seeing a melancholic, elderly man standing near the platform edge, appearing as if he is about to step off. Some suggest his spirit is tied to the station because of the parallel between his clipped wings and the river in an iron mask that flows overhead. No report on the Circle Line hauntings would be complete without a detailed look at the screaming spectre of Farringdon. This is perhaps the most documented and feared auditory haunting in the city. In 1758, 13-year-old Anne Naylor was an apprentice hatmaker working for Sarah Metchard and her daughter in Bruton Street. The Metchards were abusive masters who frequently starved and beat the apprentices under their care. Anne, who was frail and suffered from a finger infection that led to an amputation, was particularly targeted. After attempting to run away, Anne was caught and subjected to a brutal punishment. She was tied to a door and denied food and water for 3 days, eventually dying of starvation and exhaustion. The Metchards kept her body in a box for 2 months before the smell forced them to act. They dismembered her remains and dumped them in a sewer at Chick Lane. When Farringdon Station was built in the 1860s, it was constructed directly over the site of this former sewer. The spirit of Anne Naylor is rarely seen, but her screams are reported with startling frequency. These are not faint noises. They are described as blood-curdling, high-pitched shrieks of a young girl in intense pain. These sounds are most common late at night, often just as the final train of the evening is departing. The screams are so convincing that passengers have occasionally almost jumped onto the tracks, thinking someone has fallen or been attacked. Staff members have searched the station after hearing the cries, only to find it completely empty. Anne has earned the nickname the Scream Teen, or the Screaming Spectre, and her presence serves as a chilling reminder of the child labour and abuse that were once commonplace in the area. One of the more unique stories associated with the Circle Line involves the Phantom Train of 1928 at South Kensington. In December 1928, a passenger who had just disembarked from the last train of the night reported a strange occurrence. As the station fell quiet, a high-pitched whistle rang out, and a spectral steam locomotive pulled into the station. Hanging onto the side of the train was a man in a reefer jacket and a flat cap. The train did not let off any passengers. Instead, it rattled through the station and vanished into the tunnel towards Gloucester Road, giving another shrill whistle before disappearing completely. There was no record of any such train operating that night, and steam engines were already becoming a thing of the past in the deep-level tunnels. A similar sighting was reported as recently as 2013, suggesting that this ghost train might still be running its loop. The area between Barbican and Farringdon is rich with plague history, particularly the Charterhouse Square burial site. The hauntings in this area are often reported in the pubs and buildings immediately adjacent to the station entrances, suggesting that the underground spirits frequently migrate to the surface. Barbican Station is situated near the Hand and Shears pub, which is said to be haunted by a man with a red scarf. This man is believed to be a former prisoner from the nearby Newgate prison who was wounded during an execution attempt. The Rising Sun pub, also near the station, has reports of hit men's spirits. Waitresses living in the flat above the pub have reported feeling their bed covers being pulled off in the middle of the night by unseen hands. These local hauntings are often attributed to the city of the dead atmosphere that permeates the Clerkenwell district, where the proximity of historical execution sites and hospitals creates a high density of paranormal activity. The Circle Line London Underground is not just a transport loop, it is a circuit that connects London's historical tragedies into a single narrative of the paranormal. They act as a form of oral history, ensuring that the people who lived and died in the city's most difficult hours, those buried in plague pits or killed in the Blitz, are not forgotten by the millions who pass through their former resting places every day. While official records may be thin on real spectral evidence, the enduring nature of these sightings among the professionals who operate the network suggests that for as long as there are tunnels under London, there will be ghosts to inhabit them. The Circle Line remains the ultimate expression of this living history, a never-ending journey through the city's haunted past. This video is dedicated to one of our loyal viewers. Happy birthday, Jojo1981. I trust you have had a fantastic day, and thank you for your support. If you have a birthday, please let me know in the comments, and I will dedicate a video to you. Thank you.